Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So once again, good morning, everybody. If you just joined us, we're given just a minute or two to let more people join up. But we're going to go ahead and get started now. So welcome to the What's New in Inventor and Vault 2022 webinar. You have myself, Jared Bowser, along with Steve Olson today. I'm going to be taking you through the Inventor portion of the webinar, and then we'll hand it over to Steve to talk about the What's New in Vault portion. Definitely some pretty exciting stuff in both of these releases, in the Inventor and the Vault release. So we're going to go through. We're going to take a look at all of them. I have some demo stuff to show you once I get through some of these PowerPoint slides, and same for Steve. Steve has some PowerPoints and a little bit of demo as well. So let's get started on some introductions. I will show mine first. So my name is Jared Bowser. I know I've met, interacted, worked with most of you on here at some point over my last 14 years at MESA. So not a lot of introduction needed, but in case there's anybody new out there on the webinar today, I am a senior application engineer with MESA. I'm an Autodesk certified instructor and an Inventor certified professional. I've been with MESA, like I said, for 14 years. You can see a rough breakdown there of my time spent. And actually, now that I look at that, my math might have been a little bit off, but that's okay. And I've been a CAD user for 17 years now. I've used Inventor for most of that time. I also have experience with the SolidWorks, with the Fusion 360 platform, as well as the Inventor Nastran software. I'm going to go ahead and switch presenter over to Steve just for a moment so he can introduce himself.
So thank you, Jared. So most of you, I see a lot of familiar names on there, so this is probably very familiar, or at least my background is familiar to most of you. Again, my name is Steve Olson. My title at MESA is Manager of Training Services, which means I just oversee our training. But just like all the other tech guys, I still do support work, consulting, do some training, obviously, as well. I have a couple certifications from Autodesk. I'm a certified instructor. All of our instructors are certified instructors. All of us have different certifications with different products. That last one I have there, the Autodesk certification, Certified Professional in Design for Manufacturing, is Autodesk is kind of changing some of their certifications to be a little bit more not so product specific, and that is one of the newer ones that they've offered. I've been at MESA for 13 years, pretty much doing roughly the same thing over the course of time, training, support work, etc. Before that, I spent 5 years at a company called Fleetwood Folding Trailers. They made pop-up campers. And that little picture in the bottom right-hand corner there is a picture from the product brochure in 2004, when my wife and I were actually part of the brochure. Fleetwood used their employees at that time as part of the brochure, and so that's my wife and I before any kids, very newly married. So I'm going to pass the roll back to Jared here, and he's going to take over. And let's see here, I'm trying to make you the presenter, Jared. There you go, and you can cover your Inventor stuff.
All right, thank you very much, Steve. All right, before I get into the Inventor stuff, I did want to throw a poll up real quick. Just asking, and I usually ask this at the beginning of this webinar. Every time, it should be popping up now. What version of Inventor are you currently using? Maybe you're an early adopter who's already on 22, working in 22. Maybe you're still on 21 or even a previous version. We'll let this poll run for a few more seconds, some more interaction with it. Okay, looks like we have about 80% voted. Let's go ahead and close the poll, and we can share the results. We can take a look at these together. So just about, actually almost 60% are still using 2020 or a previous version of Inventor. Right around 33% or a third are using the Inventor 21, and we have a handful of people that are early adopters. 8% of you are already working on the 2022 release. So that's good. Hopefully we could show you some things today and make you excited about getting up to the current version of the software, the 2022 version of the software. Hide that. Get back to my screen there. Okay, so what's new in Inventor 2022? This is my wordy slide for the PowerPoint deck, so just bear with me for just a second as I run through this. Customer-driven improvements are always one of the big topics on what's new in a version of the software. Autodesk relies on us as the users to suggest or to come up with ideas for the software. And the more people come up with ideas, the more people that actually vote on those ideas and contribute to those, we'll see more and more functionality, more and more improvements and enhancements enter the software. So that's what I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about first. I wanted to talk about the idea station. And if you've been to my webinars in the past, you probably already know this by heart too, but I like to enforce it every single time because it's certainly an important part of the process as far as getting new and improved features in the software. So first of all, have an idea for the software. And this could be anything from a simple little workflow or maybe a big brand new tool, anywhere in between. It doesn't have to be legendary. It could just be a simple little tweak that would make your life a little bit easier. So if you look at your Tools tab on your Inventor software, you can find the Inventor Ideas link there, which will take you out to the Inventor Idea Station. This is where you as a user can submit your ideas. You use your Autodesk account to log in, you submit your idea, and then other users can look at that and they can see your idea and they could vote on it or maybe even add a comment onto it. Get feedback from other users as well or feedback from the actual Autodesk developers. The idea stations, they're ran by the actual development team. So they're seeing what you're suggesting, they're seeing the interaction, they're seeing how much feedback, how many likes or ideas are getting. So if you have an idea, like I said, it could be something super simple, it could be something super complex, anywhere in between. Get that idea up there on the idea station.
Just to kind of reinforce that, Jared, you and I both have actually played a role in specific features. I know one of your ideas, didn't one of your ideas get adopted? And I know that I commented on somebody else's idea and kind of maybe little formulated actually how it'd work out a little bit, and that ended up being adopted as well. So
yeah,
it's not like just people, these faceless people that you don't know impacting these ideas. Everybody around you can impact them, and anybody can get an idea adopted. And you and I both have played a role in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Steve. And I also want to mention that every single piece of Autodesk software, I believe every single piece, don't quote me on the every single piece part, but all of the major pieces at least, they have their own idea station. So even if you have an idea for the Fusion software or for the Vault software, go to their idea station, submit your idea, and get some coworkers, some friends to like your idea, to vote on it, and get some traction on it, and then hopefully we'll be presenting on one of your ideas in the future.
Feel free to shamelessly ask for votes from us. I've had several customers say, "Hey, I posted an idea. Would you please vote for it?" And I'm like, yeah, "Sure." And I'll tell a couple other guys at MESA to vote for it too while I'm at it. So don't be ashamed to ask for a vote.
All right. So just a quick poll here. I'm just curious if anybody has used the idea station. If you've submitted ideas that have been implemented, or just submitted ideas. If you've only looked and browsed on ideas, or if you haven't used it yet. We'll give this a few more seconds to get some responses in. All right, so we're looking at about 82% have voted, which is good. Let's go ahead and share those results. I've got to say, for as much as I talk about the idea station, I'm a little disappointed here that 50% of you have not used it. So I definitely don't expect to visit your work or talk to you here any gripes about the software whatsoever, because everything in your opinion is perfect. That's what I take from that. So I do see about 20% of you have submitted ideas or have browsed and voted, and actually a handful of you have had submitted ideas that have been implemented. So that's really cool. That's what I'd like to see. And if you're one of those 50% who have not used it, definitely take the time to at least look through it. I'm not saying spend a lot of time on it, but maybe take 10 minutes and scroll through the first page or two of the new or the hot ideas. And maybe you could see something you like that you could throw a vote onto. Or maybe you'll come up with an idea of your own doing that. Or like I joked about, if you do have something that you gripe about, you know, with Inventor, throw it up there as an idea. That's how these things get started. And then, like I said, maybe in a future release, you won't have that gripe anymore because it'll be implemented. All right, go ahead and close that poll. All right. So let's talk a moment about the Autodesk desktop app and the updates as well. As you're well aware of by now, Autodesk has been doing these incremental updates. And you see those from your Autodesk app. So your Autodesk app typically lives down in your taskbar, bottom right-hand side, down by your clock, down on your computer. And I can show you that on mine in just a second. You can also find that in your start menu. And you can take a look in your desktop app and you can see what all software you have. And you can see if you have any updates available for it. You can also look in your Inventor session to figure out which version of the software you're currently running. Other software works pretty much the same way as well. If you find that help menu in the top right-hand corner, looking at this screenshot right about in here, you can find your About, Inventor Professional, and then you can find your build and release information to help so that you know which version of the software you're running. I'm currently running 2022. I don't believe that there's any updates out for it yet. But let's take a quick peek just to see. So if I go down here to my taskbar, I can find my desktop app. Here's all my software, and right away I don't see that down arrow that you saw in the screenshot, and I'll point that out once we get back into the PowerPoint. So that tells me that I am up to date on everything, all of the software that I currently have running. So let me get back into that PowerPoint, and I'll show you that down arrow. There it is right there. So if you see that down arrow, you're going to see that you have some updates available for you. Obviously, it's an old screenshot to make sure that I had some updates showing up in there. So definitely keep an eye on that, just to keep yourself up to date on new functionality, as well as those bug fixes, those hot fixes. That's how those things are being released. You'll see throughout the year where there's several of those that pop out with, like I said, some new features and some updates. Okay, let's get into some general enhancements in the Inventor software. So we'll run through some general enhancements, and then we'll work our way through the parts, the assemblies, and the drawings. And then I'll get over to the software a little bit more and demo some of this stuff for you. So one of the things I'd like to show each year is this Highlight New option. So if you're looking on your Get Started tab, you can find that Highlight New over here on this left screenshot, where you can actually pick and say, I want to see, or I want it to highlight new features since that previous release. So anything since 2021 is going to get one of these little dots on it. And you'll see that it pops up there saying new, and it'll give you a little bit of information about what's going on there. But it's just a nice little convenient tool to help you understand if there's been a new update or a new tool added into some of your favorite commands. You can always turn that off as well, just then clicking this property panel and this ribbon options so that you don't see those little dots pop up. So maybe a nice tool to have on for, you know, the first couple of weeks you're in the software, and then you can turn them off eventually once you're happy with those. The dark theme. I know I like the dark theme, but the dark theme that was introduced in a pre-release state last version of Inventor is no longer pre-release. It's now fully graduated. It's easy to flip that back and forth between light and dark. I'll show you where that option is. It lives in your application options. Here's a nice tool that was introduced this year. And this is really useful when you're working with multiple monitors. So if you have multiple monitors, you might dock some property panels or the model browser and other windows. But then if you want to consolidate everything back into your primary window, you could switch over to the View tab and you could click this Reset UI Layout. And what that's going to do is reset everything back to the default layout, so everything jumps back onto one monitor. I've seen plenty of times where you switch from 2 monitors to 1 monitor and you start a command and that command is somewhere else. It's out in space somewhere. So you have to get creative with some of your keyboard shortcuts to get that toolbar back onto your screen. So this Reset UI layout lives on the View tab. Keep that one in mind if you ever notice something like that, or if you ever go from 2 screens down to 1 screen and you need to easily get everything back to where it belongs. Here's a nice little tool that was added in. This was actually added in Inventor 2021.2 release. So this has been in the software for a little bit, but unless you're updating those sub-releases, you didn't see it. But this is the open file location. And what this allows you to do is if you're working in an assembly and or a part file as well, or a drawing file, you can right click on one of those files in the browser and you could choose the open file location. And what that's going to do is it's going to open up a Windows folder in the location of that part. Nice handy tool. I know when I was working full-time on design, I wanted this tool for quite a while. I finally suggested it back in 2016, and it was implemented in the 2021.2 version of the software. I actually even included a little screenshot down here. There is my original idea down here in the bottom left, where I added that suggestion into it. You can see that suggestion gathered up 21 comments and 51 votes before it was added into the software and considered implemented. So it doesn't need a ton of votes. It just needs to be, something people want to see. So nice tool. I know I would have liked using that in design full time. I'm going to use that all the time now as well. A couple enhancements to the measure command. So the measure command got 2 new buttons on it. It got a done button and it has a plus sign like an apply, but in this case it's a restart button. And it's nice because you don't have to click in your blank area. You still can, but it wasn't as obvious there as it is here. So you could use that plus sign and that done option to work with that command and to keep moving in the command after you've made your initial selections. There was a nice interoperability enhancement that was included in this version of the software, and that was working with Inventor and Fusion 360. And there's going to be different instances where you might want to use this. Let's say, for example, if you're using the generative design functionality of Fusion, but your part's in Inventor, you don't need to go through the desktop connector anymore. There's a button right on your Environments tab. You can see the screenshot from my software down here where you could send that file to Fusion. So it bypasses desktop connector. It gets it right into the Fusion team, and then you can work with it on the Fusion side. So a nice little enhancement there just to skip that step, take that part directly from Inventor over to Fusion team to be able to work with it in your Fusion 360 software. Like I said, you can use that if you're working with the generative design, maybe even the Fusion 360 simulation tools, whatever the case may be. You need that part from Inventor to Fusion. There's a nice handy button to do that now, skipping a step or 2. Here's the big one for 2022, and we're going to spend a bit of time on this one on the demo side. We'll spend a bit of time on it here in the presentation side as well. These are model states. So if you've worked with levels of detail on the assembly side in previous versions, you're going to need to get used to model states now. The nice thing is everything from level of detail is going to translate over automatically, but model states is a new and very much improved workflow compared to level of detail. The nice thing about these is you can also use them on part files as well. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about it now, and then we'll jump into the software. We'll spend a little bit of time working with it over there. So a powerful new tool called Model States is added to this release. These will let you create manufacturing states or simplification levels and more in the same part or assembly files. They represent the implementation of some of the most highly requested functionality in Inventor, so you could create multiple representations of your part or assembly within a single document. They're nice, they're convenient, you can engineer, manage, and manufacture your designs, and everything exists in one file. So you don't have to worry about breaking links between different files. So we can represent things like manufacturing stages, simplification levels, product families, or even adjustable or flexible parts. These model states can contain different dimensions, features, components, bill of materials, even eye properties and parameters. You saw some images there of switching back and forth between the different model states in all weldments, assemblies, part files, sheet metal files. What can I do with these model states? Some of these different examples here. So like I said, you could create different manufacturing processes or part families. Working with the sheet metal side, you could show those bent steps. Or on the assembly side, you can show different configurations of parts. And once we get to the drawing side of this, when you're placing your views, you could choose which model state you want to show. You can also include a parts list, which includes the unique part numbers or eye properties. And like I said at the very, very beginning, if you already have current levels of details, these are automatically going to be converted to model states. So anything you had in level of details are going to automatically convert over to model states when you open them up in the 2022 release. So you shouldn't see any issues there working with your legacy data. Okay, we'll get into some demo for that in a few minutes. Let's run through a couple part and assembly and drawing enhancements. First thing I want to talk about is the Fillet Command. The Fillet Command got two enhancements. The first one is it got split up into 3 different commands. So you could do all 3 of these in the previous version of the Fillet. Now it's just a separate click for each of those. And the bigger part of this is it has a property panel now. So you've noticed the trend toward property panels. You can see on my screen that I like to have those things docked into my browser just to free up that real estate there. And then with the Fillet Command, you're also going to get this tool palette that's docked with it. So you have actually a couple options here on the tool palette with the different types of fillets. Maybe everything you do is the constant radius. That's good. You're going to be defaulted to that every time. And you have your different selection sets down here. So picking by edge or by loop or by components or by feature. So you have a tool palette that's added in here to help you with your selections and try to keep everything neat and organized. On the assembly side, we got some constraint status icons, and these are actually pretty new and pretty cool. But this is another tool that you can use to help you understand if your assembly components are fully constrained or not. You're going to see 3 different icons there. You'll see that that filled in circle, which indicates that those parts are fully constrained. You'll see the under constrained circle there, which is just a circle not filled in, to tell you that those components are not fully constrained. And then you'll see this dashed line, which indicates that the status is unknown. That typically means that you need to do a rebuild on your assembly, and that should update those statuses. This is something that you will need to turn on. You could turn that on from your browser preferences, display preferences, and then the show constraint state. So by default, those might be turned off. I'll show you how to turn those on and what those look like in a moment. The simplify command, I don't want to say it's a new command because it's been there before, but it did absorb the shrink wrap and the shrink wrap substitute commands. So everything is involved within the simplify command now. And the nice thing about the simplify command is the preset option has been built into it as well. So if you're familiar with the presets that are used throughout the software, this has presets as well. So if you're using the same type of simplify every time, you can create that as a preset, and that'll save you plenty of time working through selecting those different settings that you want. And a couple enhancements on the drawing side. The first one's actually a 2021.2 update as well. I noticed it and I really, really liked it, so I wanted to mention it. The ability to copy a drawing sheet within the same document. I know when I was back working in design full time, that one always eluded me. If I needed to create, or if I needed to copy a drawing sheet within the same drawing, I would have to copy it from one, start a new drawing, paste it into there, and then copy it from there and paste it back into the original where I actually wanted it. So it's definitely a couple extra steps. And 2021.2 solved that for me, where now I can copy and paste that drawing sheet within the same document. So nice tool there that they tossed into the 2021.2 release. Some other enhancements on the 2022 side is the shaded views on your drawing. So if you are using shaded views on your drawing, they are going to use the lighting style from the model. And you can see with this little animation here, where it's updating the one and then updating the drawing side, and then changing it back to a different lighting style, and then having it update on the drawing side. So nice little enhancement there if you are using shaded views on your drawing side. And design view, if you're using design view to place views on your drawing, this is a great update here. Allowing you to capture the camera view and the 3D annotations to place on your drawing. So if you're using design view and you have a certain camera view set up and you have 3D annotations set up over on the part side, you could pull those into the drawing side now. And one more on the drawing side that I really like here is when you're placing a dimension and it's sitting on top of a center line or a center mark, it's going to automatically break that center line and center mark now. I can't tell you how nice and that's something I would consider like a small little update, but it's so useful now that you don't have to move that dimension value up or down to get it away from that center line and center mark. So I think that's a small update, but in reality, it's actually a big update. It's going to save a lot of time and effort and frustration as well there. So nice update there on the dimension side. All right. Let's take a look at some of this stuff in demo form. So what I want to do is I want to switch over to my Inventor, and I want to show you some of the updates that I talked about before I get into the bigger portion of the demo, which is going to be the model states. So to start off with, just looking at my Inventor screen, you can see that I'm in the dark mode right now, which is what I prefer, but I want to show you how to switch that over to the light mode. So if I switch over to my tools, application options, you're going to find that on your colors tab. And we have the UI theme, and I'm going to switch that over to light. So it's in the same spot it was previously with the pre-release, but like I said, it's graduated to full release now. I can hit the apply there and give that a second. Actually, click OK for that too. Give that a second, that'll switch over to the light mode. Maybe.
While you're waiting for that, Jared, there was a question that came in. I did answer it, but I wanted to share it with everybody. They were asking about, with the model states, could you define basically a body that is the stock shape if you're going to do like some water jet 2D profiles? And with model states, I know in the CAM environment, you can create a solid body that is your stock outside of using the default stock definitions. So I haven't tried it yet, but theoretically, I should be able to create a solid body that represents my stock and then have different model states where that is enabled or disabled. And then when I go into the CAM environment, I should be able to pick up on that model state. I haven't tried it, but that should work. It looks like that bought you some time to get your back to your light theme.
Yeah, thank you. So it took about 15, 20 seconds or so to switch over. That was a good question too. Thank you there. Okay, so that gets us back into the light theme. I opened up my file. I want to show you a couple of these tools that I talked about. I'm going to start off with the measure command. So with the measure command, by default, it's going to be one of these property panels that's sitting out here in space. The tool palette itself, you can actually connect that to it. You see that light blue line there? Now it should be connected to it nicely. I like to dock these things over into my browser That way they're over there. Same with that tool palette. Connect that right there to the corner. That way it's always going to say. That tool palette there for the measure command is going to give you the option to go between faces and edges to parts to component priority. Let's go ahead and pick a couple of faces here. So grab a couple faces. So I get my information there. Now I have my done option and I have my restart option. So if you're looking for a restart option in previous versions of this, you have it now so that you can work with that. I know myself, I got used to just clicking somewhere in the blank area to reset or to restart, I should say. So that tool, of course, still works. But if you're looking for that done or that restart option, they are there now. Taking a look at the other one that I talked about was the file open. So in my assembly here, what I could do is I can right click on a part and I get this open file location. And just like it showed on the PowerPoint slide, when you do that, you right click, it's hiding down here. It opens up the Windows folder where that file is saved. So that's always been a nice want for me, and now we have that option. So if I ever needed to get into that folder for whatever reason, if I'm looking for another part or whatever the case may be, I can quickly get into that. It's also going to work if I grab the assembly name at the top. Normally it jumps up, but it's hiding down here now, probably because I have a couple other windows open down there. So I can see that. Taking a look at the constraint status icons, I have mine turned off right now. So if I go to my browser settings, I can go to display preferences and I could do the show constraint state. It's going to ask me if I want to update those for recomputing the assembly. And find that rebuild option there. And you can see when it brought that in, it indicates that my hitch itself is fully constrained with that solid dot. But it's still showing these ones as being unsure of their status. So I might have to look at that, figure out why that rebuild all didn't work. Expected those to get filled on dots as well. I could always switch over to the Assemble tab if you're having that same little issue there, and go to my productivity panel and find my degree of freedom analysis tool. And that shows me that I am fully constrained there as well. I have to look into that. Okay, turn those back off for now. And I want to open up one of these parts real quick. Actually, this one has a couple fillets on it, so I'm going to turn some of those fillets off just to get into the Fillet Command and show you some of the updates in there. Go ahead and grab an edge there. So with the Fillet Command, it's now a property panel as well. I can use some of these tools. I'm going to stick with the constant radius edge. That's probably what most of us do, so I'll stick with that. I will switch over to the edge loops. Grab that edge. Actually, I grab the that's a little bit smarter. There we go. Grab the wrong one in there, and maybe I'll cut this down a little bit. Be a little bit smaller fillet there. So I can use those pallet tools there, create that fillet, and work with that. So some nice enhancements there on the part levels, the assembly levels. Get some of those tools in there. Let me go ahead and close this out now. And I want to switch over to my first of two model states demos. And let me make sure I get the right one there. So you can see I'm working with this impeller. And right now this impeller, I've reset everything back. So if I look over in my browser, I only have the master model state listed there. So I'm going to add a few more model states to this to show some different configurations. The main change is going to be the number of blades in it. but I'm also going to update the stock number in the description. So once I get this thing on the drawing side, I can show you that table. All right, so let me go ahead and add a couple new ones here. And maybe I'll just add in 3 of these. And I'm going to double click on that first one. I'm going to take a look at the eye properties for it. I'm going to switch over to my project tab. And I can see some of this stuff is filled in for me already just from being on the first one. So I'm going to tweak some of this stuff. And let's go with 1. And this is going to go to 18 blades. And I'm going to change that one to 18 blades as well. I'm going to the parameters, and I'm going to set this one to 18 blades using that blade number parameter I had set up. And that's going to update it. So between model state 1 and master, you'll see that updated from 20 blades down to 18. So I can take a look at the second one now, or my second model state, my third one, I guess I should say. And if I look at the parameters for this one, I'm going to work through the same thing. Call this one number 2. Let's actually, let's go with 16 there. And we'll go with 16 there. And I'll make that one 16. And one more here that we'll do. We'll make a bigger jump here. Let's go down to item 5, and we'll go down to 10 blades. Okay, so in this case, I had all the part built up with the 20 blades, and really the only change I've made is the number of instances in this pattern, which uses that blade number parameter value for the count. So that's really the only thing I've changed besides the part number, the description, and the stock number. So as I switch through these model states, you can see the different configuration of the same part. Starting with my master version, which is 20 blades, down to 18, 16, and then 10. So let me go ahead and save that. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it on paper. So I'm going to go ahead and create a drawing view using that standard DWG. And let me just go ahead and make this a little bit bigger here. Place that right about the center there. And one thing I want to point out is in your drawing view dialog box, you can actually pick which model state you want to show. I'm going to leave mine set up as the master model state. I'll go ahead and click OK. And I'm going to switch over to the Annotate tab. I'm going to add a general table to this view. And I'm going to go ahead and go to my column chooser option here. So I want to add in, let's go with member first, blade number, stock number, and description. So adding a couple columns into my table. I'll go ahead and place that. We'll get that set up. So there's my table. Again, I can show different views too. So I can switch down to model state 3 and get that view set up to include those all on my drawing. Let's get some tangent lines turned on so we could see that thing. There we go. Now we can actually see the blades on there. Okay. So the big thing with model states is, like I said, just working your way through them, understanding which one you're currently working on. You'll actually see that currently editing little pencil icon there just to let you know which one's active. I do want to point out that you can actually click this edit scope pencil there, and you can pick to make changes to the entire or to every single model state version. So if you weren't familiar with working with, say, iParts and iAssemblies, you have that option to edit the member scope and edit the factory scope. Same idea over here in that you can toggle on that pencil to work on all of them. So if you need to make a change which affects every model state, you can do that. Toggle that back off so that you're working on the active one. So you have that option. And I also wanted to mention, I forgot to mention this during the PowerPoint portion, but iParts and iAssemblies didn't go away with this. Levels of details did. iParts and iAssemblies are still here. The main difference is if you need everything to be enclosed within one file, that's where model states come into play. If you need separate files, that's where the iParts and the iAssemblies come into play. Because as you know, iParts and iAssemblies create those child files whenever you work on those. Model states, everything's included within this single part. Okay. So wanted to switch over to Steve now. I feel like I took a little bit of his time away from him, but wanted to switch it over to Steve. That way he could talk about the what's new on the Vault side. Making you the organizer now, Steve.
All right, I'll show my screen. Let's see. All right, so you're seeing my screen now. All right, thank you, Jared. So on the Vault side, maybe not as many things. There's a few things I definitely wanted to point out. Autodesk always tries to have these different themes when they come up with how to, what they're doing, with the enhancements they're making. With Vault, 9 times out of 10, that theme is collaboration, easier collaboration, and 2022 is not much different. They did kind of identify 3 personas that they kind of focused on in terms of how they're going to enhance or how is it going to change your work. So the first persona that they focused on was authors, the people doing the CAD work, probably all of you on the call. People doing the check-in, check-outs, and working in Inventor or AutoCAD or whatever that might be. The other persona is the administrators, the CAD admin, the IT guy that's overseeing these. They're another element to, how to oversee these things to make their lives easier in terms of creating users and managing replication and things like that. And the last one, they call participants, I kind of maybe call consumers, people that are like on the shop floor that need access to the Vault, people that run out into the field that need to have access into the Vault even though they're out there. So we'll kind of step through each of these personas and take a look at what's new in each one. So the authors, they wanted to allow you to focus on the work you love, doing more, staying in your CAD application so you didn't have to bounce between Inventor and the Vault or AutoCAD and the Vault, whatever. So they were trying to give you an integrated data experience. And that's in a couple different ways. The biggest one is this new panel that you have available to you in Inventor called Show Details. So basically, it's a dockable panel I can kind of put maybe on the right-hand side or kind of throw in with all the other stuff in the browser on the left-hand side. It basically kind of looks and feels a little bit like the preview pane from the Vault Explorer. You're going to see your uses, your where used, your history, any ECOs that are involved, the bill of material if you're using items, so you can do that. Right from there, I'm also to be able to generate items if I'm using Vault items, and I can again see the change order information if I have Vault change orders. They also gave us 2 new properties to track changes through in the Vault. They've given us the latest release date and the latest approver. So these are system properties that are in the Vault. So if I'm using a Vault revision table, I can have those show up on my Vault revision table. If I want them in my title block, I can create appropriate iProperty mapping back to Inventor, whether that's a custom iProperty or I'm just going to push those into a standard iProperty to show up on my title block. Jared just spent a decent bit of time talking about model states, and I'm not going to drone on any more about that. What he showed you was fantastic. The only thing I'm here to share with you is that Vault fully supports these. So they're going to be, your check in, check out, your place operation. When you're doing a place from Vault, you'll be able to jump into an options window and pick which model state you'd like to be placing. You can assign an item for each model state. So Jared talked about how, the old way was to do iParts and iAssemblies, and realistically, we always had, the parent, but then it generated all these other IPTs or IAMs that kind of had to follow along. And I know I've dealt with enough of you on support calls about, hey, this child of my iPart's not checking in right, or it's not behaving right, and it's gotten better. But model states completely alleviate or eliminate that. When I check in, I'm just checking in that one file. However, if I am using items, and this is, say, an iPart type design where it's different configurations of maybe different parts, I can still create items for each different model state. The caveat there is that each row has to have the part number property available. So actually, the first time I tried this, it just created one item. I'm like, okay, this is a model state. There's like 6 here. What's happened? Did a little bit of research, and I found out that you do need to have that part number property as a changeable property in like the table or whatever. I'll show you that when I get into my little demo. But then also the Vault bill of materials, if you're on Vault Pro and doing the bill of materials in the Vault, these also the model states are applicable or supported in that scenario. One other tool that's not really new in 2022 is the find duplicates. They have given us some better ways to kind of pinpointing the duplicate that we want to replace. So if you haven't seen this, I believe it was introduced last year, maybe it was part of one of the updates. But basically, there's a function inside of Vault that it will help me find basically parts that are the same shape as the one I've selected, and then it will allow me to swap that one for other similar parts. And I can now, in 2022, filter those on a couple different categories. So I can tell it to exclude parts that are mirrors of specific parts. I can tell it to identify an exact match. I can tell it to exclude different materials. So if I have this part in steel and this part in aluminum, maybe I want to swap it out for aluminum. Maybe I don't want to see aluminum, and this application has to be steel. So I can just check a little box to tell it to exclude, it has to be the same material as the input geometry. And then I have some advanced searching that I can do, just like I would do a normal advanced search in Vault. I can do some additional searching on the results or filtering to help me find the exact one that I'm looking for. So I have just a very short demo to show this functionality. So I'm going to jump over here to my Inventor, and I'm going to go to my Vault. Got to log in here. I forgot to log in today, so I'll log into my Vault. And just to show you here, if I'm going to start a new assembly, and I'll place a model state file. So that impeller that Jared had, I basically have the same file that I will place in my assembly from the Vault, and I'll jump into a dialog that will let me pick which one I want. So if I go to my Vault tab and I do my place from Vault, it'll open up the normal Vault dialog box. Here's my model states. Here's the part. So here's that parent part file that I want to place. So down here in the bottom left-hand corner, I've got an options. I go to options. It'll open up a dialog box where I can say, okay, which model state am I after? I'll go after this one here in the middle. Say okay. I'll say open. And there it is. I'll place it grounded at the origin. And there is that component. So this part is only one part. One thing I do want to show you here is if I open this one up Again, model states, Jared covered them really well. The one thing that I'll point out here is you're probably familiar with the old workflow of iParts where, okay, well, I've made a change to my table. Now I need to generate files so I can trick Vault into checking out this child that now has an update to it so I can then check it back in. Notice that there is no generate files. There's nothing for it to really generate. It doesn't do what iParts typically do. There is the ability here to see a table. And if I go in here to say edit via spreadsheet, as we make these changes, it ends up building a table in the background for us, and I'm going to just access that. And you can see here, I've added the part number from the project tab of the iProperties, so I can then generate the different items for this. So that's one thing I've changed. Here, I'll save and close it. So that's one little difference there. So I will show you now, if I jump over to my Vault tab again, I can do the show details. So if I go to show details, you'll see that it opens up another panel. I've docked it on the right-hand side. I can kind of let it float. I can kind of dock it down here at the bottom. I can kind of put it in my properties panel wherever I want to put it. Right now, the right-hand side feels a little bit more natural. So I will say one thing that's kind of weird about this is that sometimes I have a little trouble getting this thing to update. And there it goes. I just was on the bill of material tab where there's no bill of materials to this thing. But you can see I've got a history tab. I've got a uses. I've got a where used. And this is actually used on a drawing that is actually in the Vault at the time being. I don't have any change orders or bill of materials, so there's really nothing to show there. But this does give me the ability, and hopefully you kind of see the similarities between what I'm seeing detail-wise and down here at the bottom where I've got the different tabs in my preview panel. It's roughly the same information. One thing that I did say that the model states did give me the ability to do, or Vault is compatible with these, is the fact that I can create items right from here. So if I right click on this, you can see I can say assign update item. It's going to retrieve the data. And I showed you a moment ago where I had the multiple different part numbers for this. If I jump back over to Vault, I'm not going to see anything here, but if I jump back over to my Vault, go to my item master, you can see I now have a handful of different impellers here because it's generated the items. And if I kind of scroll through here, you can see that it's got they've all got a different number. It's all got the same, associated the same ID, IPT and DWG. One more thing to show here, and if I kind of close out of this drawing, or this part in this assembly, I don't need to save that one. I do want to open up a file here that would allow me to show you the duplicates. So I got to open from Vault, not open from where I was. So it wouldn't be a Vault demonstration without the use of the clamp. So here is the good old clamp that we use in pretty much almost every one of our Vault classes and Vault demos. So what I have inside the Vault is I have a few different components here that are basically copies of these. So if I go to my Vault tab and turn on the Find Duplicates, it'll open up this panel. It will wait for me to select something. So I'll select that upper plate there. I can hit this search. It's going to show me that I've got this one that's basically the same thing, but in aluminum. If I go back to, say, I want to do another search, I can pick this component. Before I hit search, you can see here, I can say same material as input geometry. I could do that. I could also say advanced filters and put on other properties that I'm looking for matches for. I'll just hit search. And because I told it that I want the same material, I get basically nothing here. If I'm going to do another search, just hitting this plus will kind of clear those options and let me do another search. If I click on this grip and do a search, you'll see that I have an alternate grip here. And one of the things I can do here is, you can see this indicates, this little icon down here in the bottom right hand corner indicates that I actually copied one to make the other. If I want to actually replace this here, I should be able to. Oh, here we go. It's this little dot, dot, dot. I couldn't remember where to find that. I can say, if I click this little ellipsis, I can say open, go to Vault folder, show details, place it in the model, or I can say replace all. And it's going to replace those two grips with the alternate grips. And they're the same file pretty much. I think I just have a different file name, so you're not going to see anything graphically different there. If I look at my bill of material in Inventor here, though, I should see that I'm using grip B now because I was able to replace that with the other one. A couple little notes about find duplicates, if this is a new functionality to you, is there is a duplicates dashboard inside of the Vault. It will tell you kind of how many files it's indexed and you know, how many unique files inside of the tools here. The admin can define folders that it's allowed to search through. So once the admin has defined files or folders for it to search through, the job processor then needs to go through and kind of index these files. If I add a new part, it automatically kind of indexes it. But if I do a copy design, the job processor again will need to do some indexing. So there's a little bit of reliance here on the job processor. There's a little bit of setup here to it. It's just not going to automatically click on and do it. There's a few things that you'll need to set up if you want to utilize that find duplicates. All right. So that was the enhancements for, say, the authors. Let's take a look here at what they've planned or have created for the admins. So they want to give you a better idea of how to deploy and manage the team. Deploy the software and manage the team and users. So one thing that they've done is inside of the Vault, when you're creating a user, you now can allow for the Autodesk Id Authentication. So you have the ability to create a Vault account for them. You have the ability of using the Windows authentication, or you can have them authenticate using their Autodesk ID. When you do that, when you create a user of that type, you basically type in their name and their email address that is basically tied to their Autodesk account, and it will work from there. They've also given us an audit log inside of the Vault ADMS console, the server application, that it will track users, what time they log in, what kind of authentication type they used, and where they logged in from. So did they log in the Inventor add-in? Did they log into the Vault client? Did they log into the Thin client? Those types of things will be tracked in the audit. There was a small change to replication. I say it's a small change, but it's probably significant in terms of what it's going to do for you, but really on your side of things, it's not going to be that visible. So what they've done is they've changed a little bit of how replication works. We're going to have the read-write at the publisher site. The subscribers technically become read-only. So all the information is going to get written back to the main publisher site. And they've also changed in terms of the SQL database to more of a transactional replication as opposed to a full file replication. So it's a little bit quicker, a little bit easier. With this change, one thing that was a headache from time to time was site ownership. Who had ownership of this file? What site had it? As in the very early days, we had like this leasing thing we had to do with files, and that's slowly been gone away. So now we don't even really have to deal with the site ownership anymore because the way that they're dealing with the replication side of things on the SQL back end. From the installer standpoint, you guys may have seen this before. They've given us a little bit of a smoother deployment creation and installer. So from the subscription site where you would be downloading your software, you do have the ability now of selecting several pieces of software and downloading that as a deployment. You can do some configuration inside of there when you go to create those deployments. So now you could package, say, AutoCAD, Inventor, and the Vault all together so that you have just one deployment to run, as opposed to having to run each of those individually like we've had to do for the last 3 or 4 years. So just a quick little demo here. I want to show you how the user interface has changed for creating a user. So I'm going to go into my tools, administration, my global settings. Notice here that I don't have separate locations for user and group. They've kind of merged that into one. I'll say manage access, and I'll create a user real quick for myself. I'll say new. I'll create one. It'll be S. Olson. And I'll put my email address, email in there. So accounts here is where I can decide how they're able to authenticate. So I can say a Vault account, that's fine. If I go to an Autodesk ID here, you'll see that it's basically using my email address that I put on that previous screen. It's going to look for that as my unique identifier and tie that to my Vault credentials. Nothing really different here with roles. These are pretty much the same as they have been. I'll just kind of complete the, actually I'll assign roles via the group here in a second. Vaults, I'll just kind of pick here a couple for myself, and then groups. There's really no group here to list. However, what I'll do is I'll go over here and create a new group. I'll call it CAD users, and I can link it, the authentication to a Windows authentication if I want to. I'll assign the roles to the group here. And I already gave that user vaults anyway, but not a problem here. And then down here at the bottom, I can then just add S. Olson, and he'll get his role, his permission roles from the group then. So I want to kind of quickly show you that. Let me jump back to my PowerPoints for one little brief section on the participants, or what I would call the consumers. So these are people like on the shop floor that need to see drawings. They want to make sure that they don't have to print stuff out. Printed drawings on the shop floor can be confusing because how old are they? Guys like to keep drawings that they've worked from for a while. Maybe they're going to a customer site. They want to make sure they're looking at the freshest data possible. Same thing if you're going out into the field. One thing that they've added is the ability, like if you're going to use the Vault mobile app, is if you can search the Vault via a QR code. So we'll talk about the Vault mobile app and then also an enhancement to the thin client. The thin client here is probably one of the big ones. Previous years, it's been a hassle to deal with viewing inside of the thin client or the web client, because in the early days, we had add-ins into our browsers that we could add in, and those slowly got basically unsupported. And then we were now to the point where we were downloading DWFs and had to have DWF viewer locally, and that's been a hassle. Not anymore. Basically, Autodesk has leveraged the Forge platform, the Forge web viewer, and built that into the web client. So now I'm able to view DWFs and other file formats using the Forge platform inside the web client, so I don't have to deal with all these different downloads and things like that. Also, you guys may have seen, I believe this was one of the dot releases that introduced Vault Mobile. It's an app for iOS and Android. It basically can go on a tablet or a phone. It can connect into a Vault of 2020, 2021, or 2022. That gives us the ability to check in and check out non-CAD files. It kind of works a little bit like the web viewer or the web client in the fact that I can view, search, work on things there. But it does give me the ability to participate in ECO processes. It gives me the ability to check in and out non-CAD files. So if I have a PDF that I want to mark up, I can check that out, mark it up, check it back in. I have a little video here that will show that in just a moment. So let me quickly show you the updated thin client. So let me jump out of here. I'll bring a Chrome tab over. I have a little shortcut here for one of my two vaults, but I'm gonna want to jump into a different one. Real quickly, a small change that's happened this year is that your vault name is now part of the address. So about a month ago, Josh, Matt, and I discovered that if there is a space in the vault name, you see some misbehavior in the File Explorer portion of this. So if your vault has a space in the name, get in touch with us. Or if you're going to use 2020, if you're going to use the new web client, get in touch with us. We can help you resolve that. Here, I'm going to change into a vault that has a little bit more data for me to show you. I'm going to switch over to the Inventor vault that I have on this one. It's going to wants me to log back in. So over here on the side, I've got my files, I've got my items, I've got change orders. This vault just basically has some files in it, so I can browse through the File Explorer. I'm going to jump into looking at, we'll jump onto an assembly here. I can see all the properties, just like I would if I was in Vault. I've got all the history of the file. I've got uses, where I can kind of browse the structure, where used. This wasn't really used anywhere, and any items or change orders associated with. When I go to the View tab, you'll notice here it says Autodesk Forge. So it is, again, using the power of the Forge viewer to allow me to view this CAD file. This is the DWF that I'm looking at here. I can pan, I can orbit, I can do like a first-person view. I don't want to do that. I'll turn that off. I can do some measurements. I can measure, say, from here across over to here. I can do some measure and angles. One of the other things that's kind of cool is I can do an explosion. So if I come down here to explode model, this little drag will allow me to explode the model so I can get a little bit better idea of how this thing goes together. Maybe there's an internal component I had a hard time seeing that I can explode. I can go to the model browser. I can look at the properties here as well. If I select on something, it'll jump me to the part of the model where that is at, and also show me some of the labels there, or the properties. So it's not different in terms of the functionality. The viewing is way different. It's built off the Forge platform compared to what it was before. That to me is really big. That was one of the things that I personally have been like let down by the web client here, or the thin client, for a while. I'm like, man, I should just be able to view it right there. That's great to see that they've made that change. That is one of my favorite changes this year. And I do have a quick little video. I don't have a great way of replicating the Vault mobile app, but you can see here I've got a video that I pulled from Autodesk. So they're in there, they're doing some searching. They're able to kind of browse through. You've got your uses, your where used. You've got a very similar viewer experience because they're both built off of Forge. I can do my explosion. I can click on parts. I can look at properties. This scenario here, the user demonstrating is actually going to check out a PDF that will allow him to do a markup. So he's finding a PDF. He's going to check it out. I'm going to put a little comment in there. He's checking out for review. He's going to open it up. Now this is done in the iOS app, on the iOS platform. So he's actually able to mark up right from there. The Android doesn't quite support that at the moment. I tried it on my phone before this because he made his markup. He's checking it back in. So I did try this on my phone beforehand. I didn't have a very good app on my phone to change the PDF. If I did, it might have worked, but I believe that there are markup tools kind of built into the iOS version that will allow you to do that little markup and check back in. So to kind of prove what was done, he's back in Vault. He's looking at that file. He's in the full client. He's looking in, and there are his initials and his approval for this drawing. They're going to change the state. They're going to release it based off of that. And then there's also, again, the ability that you can participate in the change orders right from the Vault mobile app. And there we go. And actually, in the case of the Vault mobile app, they're attaching a Word doc that they've done. So that's the bulk of it. There's a little bit more to that video, but I'm very conscious of the fact that we're significantly over time. I'm going to throw it back to you, Jared, for a wrap up.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Steve. And my last slide, which is just basically a question, comments, or feedback type slide. I have my contact info on there. I forgot to add Steve's onto that one, but definitely just want to say thank you all for coming, for attending, for sticking with us a little bit over time there. Hopefully you saw some features and some updates that you liked, that you want to try out. If you have any questions whatsoever on anything you saw, feel free to reach out to me and let me know, and I can help you out with that. Like I said, some new exciting functionality in there. So hopefully everybody gets a chance to use all that. Thanks again, and have a good rest of your day.